is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teaching.
In Buddhism, when practitioners share their understandings of the teachings and practice, it is offered on the basis of dana paramita. And dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely, and this is done without the expectation of anything when opportunity arises. And those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis, so you can support their practice by giving what you can, and you can donate to Great Tree by going to the website, and in the upper right there should be a donate tab, giving tab.
Can you hear? Can you hear?
Oh, yes, no.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I can speak up a little bit. Our speaker today is our abbess, Rev Teijo Munnich. Daiju Teijo means Great Tree Right Stillness. Rev Teijo is a disciple and Dharma heir of Rev Dainin Katagiri. She studied with him from 1975 until his death in 1990, receiving formal training at Hokyoji in Minnesota, Tassajara Zen Mountain Center in California, and Hosshinji Sodo in Obama, Japan. Rev Munnich was ordained as a Zen priest in 1981. In 1983, she began to envision a practice center and community, a residential practice for women, which came to be Great Tree Zen Women's Temple, which opened in 2005 in Alexander. And the title of her talk today is the three, I'm sorry, can you remind me of the title of your talk?
Well, I don't know what the title is, but I'm talking about the 3 gates of liberation.
3 gates of liberation, right.
So it might just say the 3 gates or something. Anyway, good morning, everyone. Well, the reason I chose this topic was because it's something that came up in relation to this mountain seat ceremony that we're having in September, in early September. And I've been talking about that mountain seat ceremony, but also the reason I've been talking about it is because I'm trying to understand it. I'm trying to learn about it. This was actually Chimyo's idea that we do this here. And she badgered me for a long time to do it. And then finally I said yes, and she orchestrated the making and sewed a lot on a 25-row okesa. And this what I have on is a 7-row okesa. So you can imagine making 25 rows. And then COVID happened. So we are not just now, after 20 years of being in this building and me being functioning as abbess, we are now officially installing my first abbess. And I want to say thank you to Chimyo for keeping after me to do this, because even though I've always loved ceremonies all my life, somehow when I came back from Japan, I didn't want to have anything to do with ceremonies anymore. So I have gradually worked my way back to understand what ceremonies are. But this is a ceremony that is actually not done very often in the United States, in my experience. I've been to 2 in the United States. Well, I've been to 3 in the United States over the last 30 years. And especially, and this is a kind of a stepping up ceremony, but it's actually more than this, as Ajo was explaining last week. This is actually the beginning of a lineage for our temple. So it's not, it gets passed from person to person. Over time, it has many different leaders, spiritual leaders, but in Japan, you would find long lineages that have lasted for hundreds of years, whereas here, we're just getting started. So starting this lineage, he was expressing as a very important and valuable thing for us to do. And it's really trying to elicit the spirit of the practice and kind of planting the seed. But we've been working on this for the last 20 years, so this is just kind of a celebration. Someone sat me down one time, one of the Japanese monks out in Los Angeles when we were at Zen Shuji for a meeting. He sat me down and he said, Shinsanchiki, or the mountain seat ceremony, is a celebration. He kept saying, it's a celebration. So that's how I've been kind of looking at it, but I'll tell you one thing, it's a lot of work. And everyone in this room knows what I'm talking about. So anyway, I kind of broke down, I was reading the book called the Gyojiki Han, which kind of is a translation of the Japanese explanation, well, not explanation, but forms of all of the various ceremonies that are done. And I thought, well, in order to really study this, I should probably share what I've learned with others. And so this triple gate is kind of at the beginning of the ceremony. And I told you all about the whole opening of the temple a couple months ago. And the triple gate is when the person who is going to be installed is kind of coming from afar and enters at the gate. And we don't have a triple gate. In most temples in Japan, you will find actually 3 doors. And these doors this probably comes from China, I'm guessing, but these doors are called the gates of liberation, or the doors of liberation. And so we will have, we just didn't have it in us to try and make a gate. But apparently it's more the symbolic aspect of it that is important. And so we're having a sign made. Elaine Lacey is making clay. Out of clay, she's making clay slabs, just like at our entrance, that will say Mountain Gate. It's very interesting because everywhere that this is translated, it's called the Triple Gate. But if you look at the Japanese characters for it, it says Mountain Gate. Actually, and she didn't have enough room on the clay to write 3 gates of liberation. So I said, just put Mountain Gate. So what we have, I will say Mountain Gate, and the 3 Sanskrit words that each of one of the gates represents, and these have the word samadhi after them. Typically, are there's shunyata, which is usually translated as emptiness. So emptiness samadhi. Animita, I don't know how to pronounce these Sanskrit words, but animita, which is translated as signlessness, which is, I'm not sure that I still understand it, but I'll tell you what I figured out. And then the last one is called apranihita, which is called wishlessness. Pema Chodron talks about it as hopelessness, or no hope, or something. Not to hope is seen as a form of attachment. So I'm just going to read something. I think this is from the Gyojiki Han. In Buddhism, the 3 gates, or 3 doors, also known as 3 doors of liberation, refer to emptiness, shunyata, signlessness, animita, and wishlessness, apranihita. These concepts are fundamental to understanding the nature of reality and our pathways to liberation from suffering. So I think that's very important, that, when you enter the monastery or when you enter the temple, you're entering into this practice of these three kind of, I would say, awarenesses. And what it says, I think this is also from the Gyojikihan. These doors are states of mind that help practitioners break free from suffering and limitations. As the Chinese monasteries were often built in the mountainous regions, the main entrance of a monastery was usually called Shanmen, or mountain gate, symbolizing the transcendence from the secular world to the great path of Bodhi. Bodhi is awakening. From the mortal human realm to the level of sainthood. From delusion to enlightenment. When one goes through the entrance, he or she enters the mountain of treasures and shall not go away empty-handed. Buddhist practitioners visiting the monastery should leave their habitual tendencies behind and immerse in rigorous practices. However, in essence, three gates, as the name of the entrance, fits more with this precious meaning. So it's suggesting that we call it three great gates rather than mountain gate, but ours is going to say mountain gate, mountain gates. And I really, one of the reasons that I'm thanking Chimyo for kind of pressing on with this ceremony is that I'm learning a lot about what a temple represents, and or what a monastery or a temple represents, and what an abbess or an abbot represents, because it's all part of the ceremony. Sometimes when you experience these ceremonies, as I have, only in the United States, you kind of don't know what's going on. You just kind of follow along and do whatever your role is. So I haven't actually asked these questions before. Sanmin, or three gates, is usually set in a form of a decorated archway, including three gates, which are the gates of emptiness, the gates of no form. This is another commentary that I'm reading from. And the gate of no vow, also known as gate of desirelessness. And I wrote to both Shohaku and Daigaku, asking them, how would you translate these three words? And everyone seems to agree that emptiness is the best word for shunyata, although personally I think everythingness is a better word, because emptiness in English gives us the impression that something is missing, whereas actually emptiness is pointing to the fact that nothing exists separate from everything else. So that it's each thing that we see as individual, or that we, with our discriminating mind, create a separation about, is actually each thing is part of something bigger and can't exist without everything else. And so I feel like everythingness is a better word. And then the second word, the second one, both of them mentioned that formlessness is their preferred translation rather than signlessness. So I think when I go on to explain that, I think you'll understand why they say that. And then this one says the gate of no vow, or also known as the gate of desirelessness. But the word, what was the word that? Yeah, wishlessness. It kind of, I think desirelessness might be a better word, but wishlessness kind of points to the idea of not grasping, I think. So anyway, it says the three gates also represent wisdom, great compassion, and expedience, namely the three methods to free us from vexations. Also, they represent faith, understanding, and practices. So again, it says, since the symbolic meaning of the three gates is more important, it is not necessary for a monastery to have three actual gates. People do not need to be surprised. People do not need to be surprised if some monasteries have only one rather than three gates as the entrance. So our symbolic representation is going to be the sign. So starting with shunyata, this refers to the understanding that all phenomena lack inherent existence or a fixed independent self. It's not nihilism, but rather a recognition of interdependence and impermanence. And I sort of am finding that all of these gates of liberation point to interdependence and, of course, impermanence. The emptiness, like I say, I call it everythingness. There's a writer, Nancy McGregor, who wrote a book about shunyata, and she pointed out that at the time of Nagarjuna, this emptiness was sort of understood from the perspective of something called sky meditation, which monks were doing. And the reason I like to mention this is because I feel like the whole idea of looking at the sky really, or sitting quietly and experiencing the sky, really gives us a sense of more of that interconnection that we have with everything. The first time I ever meditated in a way that kind of was an aha for me, you know, we all have those moments in meditation practice. The first time I was on a mountain in Jasper, Alberta, Canada, and I just remember that feeling of being part of something much bigger. And that's the only way that I can talk about it. I took a class one time. My dance teacher was teaching a class in improvisation, and she took us to different locations outside in parks and just beautiful places all over Minneapolis. And I remember, I mean, improvisation was something I loved, and I was really good at it. I really got into it. But for some reason, I had trouble doing it. And I called her up that night and I said, why, I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with this class. And she said, well, you know, sometimes it's just hard to focus when you're outside. And it was that same sort of feeling when I realized that. Then the next class that I went to, I decided to, you know, I had sort of thought about it, and I decided to just kind of let everything around me kind of just join with everything around me. And it's very different from doing improvisation inside. And the other thing that I remember, I lived in Kansas for a while. That's where Great Tree was going to start, but things didn't exactly happen to make that work. But when I was living there, you know, Kansas is very flat, and there's lots of sky, lots and lots and lots of sky. And there's something about those prairie states that really puts you into the shunyata experience, you know. So that's the best I can do about explaining shunyata. I feel like, you know, if you go back and read Nagarjuna's writings from about, I guess it's from about the 3rd century, that's what a lot of people look to. You find everyone quoting Nagarjuna when it comes to the teachings of emptiness. He wrote verses. And basically, if you try to study and understand those verses, or if you try to read those verses, it will dismantle your mind. What I found, when I first studied emptiness with Katagiri Roshi, I literally walked out of every lecture in tears because I just was so incapable of grasping what he was trying to explain. And I don't know how to explain it, but something about it was coming through, I think. And when you read Nagarjuna, years later, I was asked to teach a class at Warren Wilson College in about Shunyata, and I brought out Nagarjuna, and I had everyone in the class rewriting the verses, and I was doing it at the same time. And what I discovered is that when you read Nagarjuna, one of his verses, he kind of shows you what you're grasping onto within that verse. And it would take me a while to get through the verse and kind of, oh, I see. And then I'd write something about, just some kind of response. And then I'd go on to the next verse and it would show me what I had attached to in understanding the previous verse. And it, by the time you get about a third into Nagarjuna's writings, your mind, you feel like you can't think anymore, kind of. It's very disconcerting. And yet it's also a great opportunity to let go of that tendency to want to grasp onto thoughts. And I think from the first time that I ever studied emptiness, not just with Katagiri Roshi, but he brought somebody from San Francisco to teach us about emptiness. As I tried to read about it, I remember the first time, I think it's called Conception of, I can't remember the name of the book, but I remember thinking, oh, I see, this will help me not try to understand. But even so, that practice is very difficult because our mind, as Katagiri Roshi once said to me, our mind naturally wants to think. I said, well, I thought, we weren't supposed to be thinking. Why are we reading about Buddhism? Why are we studying? That's what the mind's doing. So that's what the mind, and Uchiyama Roshi says that too. He says the mind, the thoughts are secretions of the mind, and just like, you don't want to over-secrete gastric juices or you'll get sick. If you over-secrete thoughts, you'll get sick. So let's see. So the next one is called Animita. And I am not so familiar with this, and that's probably why I'm struggling with it. But I think that what it says here is a sign or characteristic refers to the generic appearance of an object in distinction to its secondary characteristics. And then there's another word that I'm not going to try to pronounce. This emphasizes the absence of fixed characteristics or mental constructs used to grasp and label reality. It encourages letting go of fixed ideas and perceptions. So, as I was studying about this, I was finding that all of these were kind of connected. So, as it talks about it encourages letting go of fixed ideas and perceptions. It's also the practice of shunyata. Sign refers to the outward appearance or characteristics that are perceived and labeled, which is what we do all the time. Signlessness emphasizes looking beyond these superficial forms and recognizing the true nature of phenomena, free from conceptual projections and distinctions. It encourages releasing attachment to perceived signs and forms, understanding that they are constantly in flux and ultimately empty of inherent recognition or perception. And I think the practice of signlessness, I think for me, is the practice of recognizing our attachments and I guess through that recognition, letting go. But our attachments are always, there's always some form of attachment. Recently, I've been noticing how my mind wants to attach to experiences and that I've had, or like obsessing about all the details of the ceremony, things like that. That my mind naturally wants to do something, to attach to something, and just being able to recognize that in Zazen is an opportunity. It is a letting go. All of those things that we recognize in Zazen are letting go. And really, attachment is just something that we do with our minds. It's I remember at one point I was very attached to a person, and I remember sitting with that and sitting with it and sitting with it and just suddenly recognizing, trying to figure out how to not feel that attachment, and at one point just figuring out that attachment was just something that my mind wanted to do. And of course, the ultimate letting go is that we have to die. So this practice of signlessness, this practice of recognizing how we attach to our perceptions, I think is a very valuable opportunity, and in the Tibetan tradition, they talk about the bardo, the death bardo. They talk about, 4 bardos, 4 transitions of the life cycle. One is from human birth to human death. One is the active dying process, which goes into what our medical system perceives as death. So it continues, and then there's the death bardo, and then there's the kind of re-coming together of in some form of all of the elements of our bodies, all of the energetics of what we call a human body, which is just lots of energy in connecting with each other. But during that death bardo, it says, it first of all, it kind of explains that it takes a while for your mind to even recognize that you've died. So maybe some kind of denial or something. But when you are going through that transition, that your consciousness is dissipating as your body is dissipating. And so if there's attachments there, especially attachments to fears, that those fears are going to consume you if you don't have the practice of recognizing that, that looking directly at the fear and recognizing that it has no substance, that it's just something that you created through your experience in human life. And if you don't recognize it, you suffer. How much more we suffer, it's the same thing we do in Zazen. It's the same thing we do in human life. We suffer because of our attachments. So to be able to recognize how we perceive things. This is what is called as signlessness or formlessness. But I've decided on our sign to put the original Sanskrit words and let everybody kind of figure out what they mean, because even to figure out the translations is not that easy. But if you have a word that is so foreign to you, you're more likely to make a deeper study of it, is my experience. There's some words in that Buddhist scholars early on agreed to never translate because they were so difficult to translate and they might give the wrong idea. Some of them they've gone ahead and translated anyway, but so the third one is this wishlessness, apranahita. In Buddhism, apranahita translates to aimlessness, wishlessness, or freedom from striving. It represents a state of being without specific goals or desires, where one is not attached to outcomes or future expectations. It's about finding contentment and liberation in the present moment rather than constantly seeking something beyond it. Thich Nhat Hanh says that you should take one lazy day every week. And how he describes it, a lazy day is unscheduled and is very difficult. And I was doing a 5-day retreat with him, and he was giving lectures every day, and he was, doing walking meditation with us and all the things that he does when he leads a retreat. And on the third day, somebody else gave his lecture for him, and they said, Tai is taking a lazy day today. And I thought, my first reaction was, what? He's leading the retreat. And then I thought, maybe I can learn something from this, But this practice of taking a lazy day is not at all easy. And there's lots of things that I found about this that I could share with you, but one of the things that I think is well said by Pema Chodron in the book When Things Fall Apart. She talks about it as giving up hope, and I see this as exactly what this what's wishlessness is pointing to. She says, if we're willing, hopelessness and death is what the chapter is about. If we're willing to give up hope that insecurity and pain can be exterminated, if we're willing to give up hope that insecurity and pain can be exterminated, then we can have the courage to relax with the groundlessness of our situation. This is the first step on the path. But experiencing groundlessness is not so easy. When I was teaching Nagarjuna at the college, I was also lecturing on it at Zen Center of Asheville. And there was a woman who was coming very regularly. And this was for over an extended period of time, like 8 or 9 weeks or more, maybe more than that. And she was just very diligent about coming. I think we went through all of Nagarjuna's verses. And anyway, one day she came to me and she said, I think that I have experienced emptiness. And I said, oh, really? And so she said, so she told me about this experience. And I said, yeah, sounds like emptiness. And she said, well, I don't like it. I said, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. She said, I feel like I don't know what's coming next. And right? And she never came back. And I thought, oh, what a shame, that she got stuck in that place. But that, Shinzen Yang, a monk by the name of Shinzen Yang, came and spoke to us at Zen Center, Minnesota Zen Center. And he talked about the experience of emptiness as what John of the Cross talks about it as the dark night of the soul. An experience of just realizing that you don't know. Kids call it boredom. And we call it boredom, But actually it's being in the present moment. And it's very uncomfortable to get used to. But Zazen will take you there. Turning your mind, and this is going on with Pema Chodron, turning your mind toward the Dharma does not bring security or confirmation. Turning your mind toward the Dharma does not bring any ground to stand on. In fact, when your mind turns towards the Dharma, you fearlessly acknowledge impermanence and change and begin to get the knack of hopelessness. She says, you fearlessly acknowledge impermanence. Uh-oh. Oh, good. Because those chairs have fallen apart before. And I think we've got them fixed now. Sorry, we had a little. It sounded like, yeah, I think that's what it was. We have them. They're on rollers. They're pretty comfortable, but they roll, so we put little discs under them to keep them from rolling. One of the discs slipped, and I thought her chair broke. The idea of fearlessness, someone said to me one day, a long, long time ago, said, you seem like you're very fearless. And I said, yeah, I think I am fearless, but fearless means to me that I'm afraid, but I do it anyway. And I really think that's what fearlessness is. And I think that Zazen really takes us to that place where we recognize the value of stepping into something or being with something that is uncomfortable for us. And we all help each other by sitting together and making it more difficult to leave, to just get up and say, well, okay, I'm feeling sad now, so I don't want to feel that. So I'll just come back some other time when I feel better. People often say to me that they haven't been meditating because they haven't been very focused, or their concentration isn't good, or they're going through a rough time. And I think that's the most important time. That's the most valuable time. And that's the time where we can really look deeply at what's creating the fear and what it is that we're running from. It's so interesting to me to go to the prisons. I was just visiting one of the inmates up the road at Craggy a couple of days ago. And they're giving me 2-hour visits with him once a month, which it sounds like a lot, but we really, it's really great to have that length of visit. But, and I also go to a group out in Spruce Pine, and they are really faced every day with their fears. And, in that situation, you don't always have a supportive Sangha. They just live for meditation every week because that's their support. And during the hurricane, they closed both of the prisons in Spruce Pine because there was a lot of damage, and they were sprinkled all over the state. And I've been communicating with them they have, what do you call this? Not iPads, but what are they called when they're not called iPads?
Tablets.
What? Tablets, yeah. They all have tablets, and they can it's like a texting. You have to get the app to text with them. But what they were all saying is how they really wanted to get back to their Sangha. They supported each other so much. And interestingly enough, it spawned Sanghas in 2 more prisons in the state because these guys wanted meditation so much that they are leading groups, which is great. It's great, but it was so painful for them to be separated from that. It was so important in their life in order to keep some kind of stability, to have that 1 week, 1 hour each week, that support. Hopelessness means that we can no longer have the spirit for holding our trip together. We may still want to hold our trip together. We long to have some reliable, comfortable ground under our feet, but we've tried 1,000 ways to hide and 1,000 ways to tie up all those loose ends, and the ground just keeps moving under us. Trying to get lasting security teaches us a lot, because if we never try to do it, we never notice that it can't be done. The difference between theism and non-theism is not whether one does or does not believe in God. Theism is a deep-seated conviction that there's some hand to hold. If we just do the right things, someone will appreciate us and take care of us. It means thinking there's always going to be a babysitter available when we need one. We all are inclined to abdicate our responsibilities and delegate our authority to something outside ourselves. I often tell the story about one of the nuns. She was American, she was from San Diego, really smart young woman, and she was my roommate at monastery in Japan at Hosshinji. And it was her teacher there. She ordained at the temple, at the monastery, with the teacher there. And she'd been practicing with him for a while. And one day he looked at her. He had some Rinzai training in the early days because Hosshinji was sort of had that Rinzai influence at that time. And often Rinzai teachers will say something like, tell me what you're thinking or something. And that's what he did to her. He said, tell me what you're thinking. And when she was in Dokusan, and she said, why don't you tell me what to do? And she said, as soon as she said it, she was so embarrassed. But I remember recognizing my wanting that of my teacher. Just tell me what to do. If you tell me what to do, I'll just do it and then I'll be good to go, right? But it's not like that, and that's what she's getting at here, that Buddhism or this practice, she's a Tibetan Buddhist practitioner, but Zen particularly, it doesn't give you anything to hold on to. You don't get mantras, you don't get koans. All you got is shikantaza. Just sit down and shut up is what my teacher used to say. He said shikantaza means just sit down and shut up. And I say shikantaza is resisting the compulsion to do something, to think something, because we want something to do. We want something that we can hold on to. The difference, I already read that. And then she said, non-theism is relaxing with the ambiguity and uncertainty of the present moment without reaching for anything to protect ourselves. We sometimes think that Dharma is something outside of ourselves, something to believe in, something to measure up to. However, Dharma isn't a belief. It isn't a dogma. It's a total appreciation of impermanence and change. And then somewhere, I don't know where I found this, somewhere on the internet, these three gates are not merely philosophical concepts, but are intended to be cultivated through meditation and practice. So now every time, you can even imagine the sign. This is what the sign is going to look like. It's going to say Mountain Gate. Well, she hasn't made it yet. Do you think we should make it Triple Gate? She said she couldn't get too much on there. Should we make it Triple Gate or Mountain Gate? What do you all think?
I vote Mountain Gate.
Okay. Yeah, I know. It's got some strength to it, doesn't it? Yeah.
Isn't the name of the temple? Does it have mountain?
It has, the mountain name of the temple is Buddha Mountain, Pure Buddha Mountain.
I think so.
Yeah. What?
Butsu something.
Yeah, Butsu. It's
Butsuzan.
Butsuzan, yeah. That's what it is. Butsuzan is the way name or the mountain name that we were given. I don't know if this is typically the way it's done, but when I was told to get a mountain name for our temple name is Great Tree, but the mountain name, I still don't know exactly what that is. I'll do some study on it and get back to you. But when I was told about Teijo that we needed a mountain name, I said, well, how do you make a mountain name? He said, go ask Akiba Sokan, he'll give you one. And so we had a little conversation, and then he gave us this name. So, and Akiba Sokan is he is a really good friend of mine because when he first came to the United States, he one of the things he did was he came to Tassajara Monastery in California, which is where I was practicing at the time. And he sat just 2 places away from me during Zazen. So we have a deep Zazen relationship. And he's going to be coming to the ceremony and kind of overseeing it because now he's the head of American Soto Zen practice. And so he is required by, there's 2 different people that are, one or the other is required by Japan to come as kind of a witness. What's it called? Sado? What's it called?
Sado.
Sado. The role is Sado. So he gave us this name, and it means a lot to me because we do have his Dharma friendship, and it's just a nice connection. And now he has given something to our temple, and actually this kuromo he gave to me long ago because I don't know why, but I didn't have a decent kuromo. He came to our monastery in Minnesota too. I think it was kind of a big shock to him because he was at Hokyoji for 9 years, and Hokyoji is a pretty sophisticated place, you know, and our monastery in Minnesota wasn't built. We lived in tents, and our zendo was a big army tent. And so maybe we had constructed some kind of zendo out of labor that we harvested from our land by that time, but it had big holes because the wood was green wood. So this is what he experienced when he came to Minnesota, and he told me. I said, you know, can you tell me where I can get a new kuromo, because my kuromo was not a very good one. And so he got this for me. It's a little ripped, or I gotta fix it, but and I'm wearing it because my other kuromo is actually literally falling apart. I've got to fix it. So one of the things that this ceremony has helped us do is to kind of clean up the grounds and fix up the temple. You know, we've got a new deck, and we've got a new septic, and we've been working on, you know, getting the grounds cleaned up and everything and set up for this. And but one of the things that I've discovered is that I have to mend my robes. And I have an old robe that I got, that was Katagiri Roshi's, I got when I was doing Zuisei, because you have to have a kind of a golden mokuron robe. I don't know, some of you have seen that robe, and it was Katagiri Roshi's, and it has to be stitched back together. And then what happens, what you will see happen if you're at the ceremony, is I will come through the mountain gate and come to the backyard, which is going to be our ceremony hall. And when I get there, I'll switch to the 25-roll kesa, which is actually not made. It's not for me. It's that it will become something that the temple will pass from abbess to abbess. So that kind of carries on that tradition too. So anyway, it's about 9:54, and I guess we don't have time for people's comments. Anybody have a comment they want to make? No? Okay, let's have announcements, and then we will give back the merit. Thank you all.
Okay, so there's a full moon tonight. So we'll be having, it's a sturgeon full moon. So there will be a full moon gathering tonight at, I believe, 7 p.m.
In person and online.
In person and online. On Tuesday, the 12th, Zen Center of Asheville has their Zazen Dharma talk. And the speaker is Jim Yakusen Barnum. So that's this Tuesday, and that is in person only at Zen Center of Asheville, and that's at 7 p.m. And then our speaker next weekend is Reverend Genjo. So come listen to his talk. Have you chosen the title of your talk yet?
Dharma combat.
Dharma combat.
He's
I'm so
studying.
excited.
Okay, so here's the thing. When you do a mountain seat ceremony, one of the parts of it is that you have to have a head monk. And the head monk actually does Dharma combat during the ceremony. So the two, what I was saying to somebody the other day from studying this, the two basic components, other than, you know, the processional you know, giving gratitude to the earth god and to the to Bodhidharma, the ancestor god, or the ancestor Bodhisattva, and to my teacher. Those, I'll do those three things. And then I get up on the mountain. It's called the Shumidan in a Japanese temple. It's in the ceremony hall, and answer questions. So anybody, oh yeah, people think of questions, and we also need to teach people that form. There's a special form for asking questions at this. So I'll be up on this, up above everybody, and people come up and ask a question. And then the next part, the last part, will be the Dharma combat with a head monk. And so have your questions ready for him too. And so I asked Teijo, was it last week? I asked Teijo, what's the difference? Is mine Dharma combat too? And he said, no, that's not Dharma combat. You're, you know, expressing your wisdom. But actually he's going to be challenged. So think of a good challenging question for him. And that's not so formal. That's more of a shouting out. Shiso-san. But with the way you do for me is you do bows and then you go up and ask the question. and then you say, what is it? Kichijo, Kichijo, Dai Kichijo. So practice that too. It doesn't translate well. I mean, we can give you the translation, but the Japanese is much better. Anyway, so that's it, right? Come to the full moon ceremony. It's at 7 o'clock. Every full moon we have. It's not a ceremony. It's a gathering. So I just talked you through the components of this.
Call and response. May the merit of this practice benefit all beings.
Benefit all beings.
And bring peace.
And bring peace. Now I will do 3 prostrations, and then we'll have the 4 exit bells.